This chart is the punchline. The idea is that Mr. Lutnick has taken the last 30 days and he's actually sat down to put together his list of the Dirty 60. They have a list of about 60 different countries that they want to specifically tariff. Every single country in the world, you know, we got like, what, 192 of them or whatever, 10% tariff, baseline. We start at 10%, no negotiations. Okay, well, this is a game changer, first of all, because I want you to remember where we started. When you actually weigh the tariffs by percent of goods that are traded on those tariffs, and you weigh those tariff rates, I want you to understand what we're starting with. This is what we're starting with, and this is from the World Bank. Hong Kong, no tariffs. Singapore, no tariffs. A lot of people call it Singapore Inc. Germany, 1.3%. France, 1.3%. Italy, 1.3%. Canada, 1.4%. United States, 1.5%. Okay? Donald Trump's proposals now to put a 10% floor on everyone is greater than every single other actual trade dollar-weighted tariff that exists. Trump's proposal goes as high as over 30% for some countries, and that's because Lutnick has sat down and decided, you know what we're going to do is we're going to bundle together every possible thing that we could say bad about another country, such as, oh, well, other countries manipulate their currencies, or they use child labor, or anything basically that makes them different. Emission standards, whatever. Anything that makes them different, we will consider that a tax on American products, which I get the argument. You know, if other countries are legally using children and we're not, that's bullcrap. Get it. But understand what you're toying with here for a moment. You are toying with a U.S. economy. I'm a free trade buff. I think we should have free trade, and I will make a bet that I guarantee we will return to free trade by the end of the decade. I suspect within the first 6 months of 2029, assuming Donald Trump actually leaves office in January 2029, because the next administration will push us back to free trade. Donald Trump, I hope he will, but I don't know if he will. But this idea of kind tariffs, this is the greatest fugazi I've ever heard in my life. These are not kind tariffs. These are the worst tariffs that have ever existed. I don't actually think they're going to stick. I think this is designed to create absolute panic, because that's exactly what this is doing. Now, these tariffs don't actually go into effect immediately. Donald Trump knows this. This is part of Donald Trump's art of the deal, chaos theory, whatever the hell you want to call it. You can't predict what he does, and that's the point. Nobody went in today expecting let me show you the chart, and kind tariffs to be 30-something% tariffs on China. Nobody expected that to happen. So now the question is, where do we go from here and where's the bottom? Well, ideally, the bottom comes in coordination with Donald Trump suggesting that we're going to come up with some form of deals and we're going to scale back some of these tariffs. Because the reality is some of the tariffs that we're seeing now are insane. Look at this. Here is a chart showing you where we have free trade. That's the green, this dark green. We have lower than US tariffs, so China actually has fewer tariffs on us than we have on them. And then the blue areas are areas where our tariffs are about 2 to 5%, or sorry, their tariffs are about 2 to 5% higher than ours. So in fairness, you know, Europe, Europe right here exceeds by less than 2%, but you know, Russia and some other areas 2 to 5%. So you know, you've got a range here where some countries have tariffs 5 to 10% higher than ours. Maybe a little bit more than that, maybe a little less than that. But the response that we now have of this blanket 10% tariff on all of our trading partners, even where trade is sitting at just 2%, or tariffs are sitting at just 2%, and now all of a sudden we're taxing them 10 to 20 to 30%, is quite frankly insane. What's worth noting, what most people who are parroting the sort of Trump narrative that this is somehow good for the United States are missing, is that when you actually look at what tariff rates were, trade weighted across the country, sure, you could cherry pick little quota-based things like triple digits on milk, which not a single triple-digit tariff was ever paid on milk sent to Canada. What you have over here is you actually see tariff rates are pretty low. 1.3, 1.4, 1.6, 2.2% from China. These are not levels that are in tune with the response that we are providing. So this is why folks are now increasing their odds of a recession. And it sucks because the people who are going to suffer are the Americans. Stellantis just announced plans to lay off 900 people effective immediately because of the tariffs going into effect. That's 900 more American workers laid off. And that's just the beginning. We expect substantially more of these sort of layoffs. They're estimating that tariffs will actually generate less than half of what Trump is aiming at, that $600 billion, although he mentions trillions now, mostly because as tariffs and taxes go up, not only are you going to see trade go down, but you're going to see the money that's available in the economy from wages or business profits also go down. So that multiplier effect is just going to compress trade pretty dang heavily. So this is obviously really problematic because it means Donald Trump's goals might not be achieved, and the credibility Donald Trump has from a position of negotiation may not actually be as strong. Now, hopefully other countries fold and we can go to a freer version of free trade that we had before, because obviously we had free trade asterisk before with everybody tariffing each other somewhere around 1.5% to 2.5% on a trade weighted basis. Some countries a little more, some countries a little less. And then obviously on individual goods and services, some tariffs were a little higher, some were a little lower, but the weighted average tariffs were very low. They were on average generally around 2.5% plus or minus. Now, all of a sudden, we're putting a minimum tariff of 10% on everybody else, 5 times what we've ever done before, and substantially more in countries like China or other areas within Asia where tariffs are now anywhere between 30 to 54%, which is obviously extremely devastating for trade in those regions. Problem with the idea that the worst is priced in is that it's probably assuming that the worst of the tariff policy announcements are over and that we're going to resolve tariff policy with negotiations from here. Hopefully, we just need to get it done before we hit a recession.